everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the Book of Mirdad, exploring some fascinating excerpts about spiritual enlightenment and self-discovery.
Yeah, the Book of Mirdad is really interesting. It's not like other books that just tell you the teaching straight up.
Hmm.
It pulls you into this whole story, a world full of symbols and characters, and they actually mirror our own struggles.
That's so true. Like right away, we're dropped into the Ark, the secluded monastery built by Noah's son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like this place steeped in ancient tradition, maybe even a bit stuck in its ways. And then into this seemingly unshakable world walks Mirdad.
And it's not like a big grand entrance you'd expect from someone who claims to have these profound spiritual truths, right?
Right.
He shows up almost like a servant kind of blending in, but his presence is definitely not ordinary.
No, not at all. It's like a quiet earthquake. Even Shamadam, the head monk there, is like, Mirdad, Mirdad, what have you done to Shamadam? Shamadam, what have you done to yourself? That's a full-blown internal crisis right there. What do you think about this instant tension between Mirdad and Shamadam?
Well, I think Shamadam represents a really common human struggle. It's that clinging to authority, clinging to this fixed worldview because it gives us a sense of control. You know what I mean?
Totally.
He's built his whole identity around his place in the Ark. Then Mirdad shows up with this undeniable aura of wisdom, and it throws everything off. Shamadam's tears, that inner turmoil he feels, it just shows how scary it is to have our comfortable little worldviews challenged.
And Mirdad, being wise as he is, doesn't even try to fight for power. Instead, he chooses silence. For 7 years.
Wow.
Can you imagine all the whispers, the theories, the anticipation building up inside the Ark? It's like that silence makes his words, when he finally speaks, 1,000 times more powerful.
It's true, that silence, that deliberate choice to hold back, it's a teaching in itself, isn't it?
Definitely.
It creates this void, this emptiness that forces everyone in the Ark to face their own internal noise, their assumptions about knowledge and what enlightenment really means. It's almost like Mirdad saying, hey, before you can really hear anything, you got to learn to listen to the silence within.
I love that. And when he does speak, he introduces this incredible concept of veils and seals. He says that the very things we rely on to understand things, our language, our perceptions, can actually block us from the truth. It makes me think of that saying, we can't see the forest for the trees. Do you think we get blinded sometimes by our own ways of seeing the world?
Oh, absolutely. I think Mirdad is really pushing us to look beyond just the surface level, to see that words and symbols are just dot tools, really. They're pointing to something much deeper. And to get that something, we've got to break free from rigid thinking, from being stuck on just the surface of things. It's a call to go beyond the familiar and be open to a way of knowing that's more fluid, more intuitive.
It's like he's saying, become an explorer, but not just of the world outside, but of the worlds inside ourselves. And Mirdad really shakes things up when it comes to our understanding of language. He calls the word I the creative word, right?
Right.
But he's not just talking about it like it's a simple pronoun. He sees it as this force, this power that shapes our reality. What's your take on this whole creative word idea?
Well, it's a powerful reminder, right,
Yeah.
that we're not just sitting here passively watching the universe go by. Our thoughts, our beliefs, even how we see ourselves, it all has this creative energy behind it. I think Mirdad is pointing to how our inner world and the outside world are connected.
Yeah.
That our own little I is like a tiny reflection of the big I, the creative force that started everything.
Wow. Yeah. So it's not just about thinking happy thoughts all the time. It's about understanding the responsibility that comes with this power we have to create. What we focus on, what we give life to inside ourselves, it affects everything around us.
Absolutely, yeah. And that idea of responsibility, it comes up again when Mirdad talks about crucibles and cribbles.
Yeah.
He says God's word is like a crucible. It brings everything together, fuses it into this unified whole. But our words, our human words, he says, are like cribbles. They're always sorting, dividing, pulling things apart.
It's like we take the unity of creation and try to shove it into these little boxes, these categories of good and bad, right and wrong.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my cribbles never quite match up with yours, which I guess is where a lot of conflict comes from.
Exactly. And it's interesting, Mirdad links this whole need to judge and divide to the word I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our individual I, because it's so focused on its own limited view, it creates these separations that aren't really real.
Hmm.
But when we align ourselves with that bigger I, that universal force of love, well, that's how we can break free from seeing the world as this fragmented mess.
Yeah, and he even gives the example of something being considered evil by one person, but then someone else comes along and sees it as good. It just depends on our perspective, our cribble. So if we want to escape this constant cribbling, this judging and dividing, what's the answer? What's the antidote, according to Mirdad?
Love. It's the great unifier. It's like that crucible melting away all the walls we put up between us and others, between us and them.
Oh,
Mirdad uses this metaphor of a tree. He says, real love sees the whole tree, not just the leaves we like best. If we try to love only one leaf and ignore the rest, the whole tree suffers.
beautiful imagery. And it speaks to how big and expansive the love Mirdad's talking about really is. And it's interesting, he even challenges the usual ideas about celibacy. He says it's not just about abstaining physically, but about reaching the state of inner wholeness, a way of being that's beyond duality.
It's about recognizing that divine spark within each of us, those masculine and feminine energies, right? True
Mhm.
celibacy, as Mirdad sees it, it's not about denying those parts of ourselves, but integrating them. It's about becoming this complete being, a reflection of that same divine unity we see in the universe.
And it's amazing how Mirdad actually lives out these teachings in the story. Like when Shamadam gets angry and tries to control him, Mirdad responds with compassion. It's like he can see right through the anger to the fear and insecurity underneath it all.
It's true. It reminds us that true spiritual strength, it's not about dominating others or making them see things our way.
Right.
It's about meeting that resistance with understanding, you
Mhm.
know? Seeing that even anger and fear can be like twisted up expressions of wanting love and connection.
That's a good way to put it. And that takes us to one of the most dramatic parts of the story we have here, where Shamadam, he just can't handle Mirdad's teachings anymore. They clash so much with his own rigid beliefs that he throws him into the black pit. Seems like a defeat for Mirdad, but we know it can't end there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the symbolism of the black pit comes in.
Oh, I see it.
It represents all those limiting beliefs we have, those dark places inside us that we try to keep hidden, even from ourselves. And when Mirdad gets out, he's not just showing off some supernatural power. He's showing us that it's possible to confront those inner demons and come out stronger.
And it's not just about escaping, it's about what he does after, right? It actually converts this powerful prince, someone who is going to imprison him, turns this enemy into a devoted follower. It's amazing, like watching those limiting beliefs just crumble in the face of pure compassion and wisdom.
Absolutely. It's like this powerful testament to how much Mirdad's message can actually change people. He's not forcing his will. He's awakening something in them, something that rings true deep down.
Yeah, and it's even more incredible when it goes back to the Ark. He doesn't even punish Shamadam for what he did. He just offers forgiveness and guidance. It's like he can see past all the surface stuff, all the fear and ego, and he just sees this little spark of potential.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's unconditional love, plain and simple. Mirdad's not interested in revenge or making Shamadam suffer. He gets that real freedom comes from letting go of the need to punish, the need to blame others for our pain.
And that idea of a new arc comes up again, but not a real physical one, right? More like a spiritual one, a way of life that breaks free from dogma and rigid beliefs. Makes me wonder, what would a world based on Mirdad's teachings look like, where love, not fear, is in charge?
That's the invitation at the heart of the Book of Mirdad, I think. It's like a call to build that new arc inside ourselves, to become these vessels of compassion and understanding and wisdom. It's a journey of discovering ourselves, and at its core, realizing that we're connected to everything.
And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all, the realization that we aren't just these isolated beings, but part of something so much bigger and more amazing than we can even imagine. And if the Book of Mirdad is like a vessel itself, as we've been saying, maybe it carries that realization within it, ready to be found by anyone who's brave enough to look inside themselves.
That's a beautiful thought to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of Mirdad. We'll see you next time, fellow seekers.